session for today's international workshop on AI for equity. And it's my pleasure, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce to you our first keynote speaker for today, Professor Katina Michael. And before I give the floor to Katina, I would like to briefly tell you a few words about her. So Katina Michael is a professor in the School for the Future of Innovation in Society and School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence at Arizona State University. Previously, Katina has held different positions in academia, in Australia, in China, in the UK as well. Katina has published 6 edited books and has co-authored 2 500-page reference volumes. She researches predominantly in the area of emerging technologies, and she has been the guest editor of 14 special issues. And in 2017, Katina was awarded the Brian O'Connell Distinguished Service Award from the Society for the Social Implications of Technology. She is the founding editor-in-chief of the IEEE Transactions on Technology and Society. And yeah, I will stop here. Katina, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. I think I'm just as excited to be here as you, Maria. And thank you for the generous introduction to Jeremy Pitt for assembling these amazing people all together, as he often does. We are all united through him, and so much we have gained through his practice and his mentorship. So I feel very, very fortunate to be here presenting with all of you today, and to the second panel, but wasn't the first one, just something crisp, memorable, and with major messages. Today, as your keynote speaker, your first one, I want to pay tribute to Jeremy's abstract and description for the workshop, where he asked us to look at the issue of modern indentured servitude through the eyes of those at the grassroots. So instead of looking at it from the top down, to look at it from the bottom up. And I was very much inspired to do that through a case study using the New York City taxi system as an example in the context of the gig economy worker. So my presentation today will not have much speak from me, but more showcase those voices that are at the heart of modern slavery on the receiving end. And I leave it to you to try and figure out whether it is a single actor, multiple actors, or even multiple things that are enslaving these people into servitude. So technology's role in modern indentured servitude in business, and my definition begins of modern slavery as follows: situations of exploitation that a person cannot refuse or leave because of threats, violence, coercion, deception, and/or abuse of power. Cannot refuse. They're stuck. They can't leave. They're threatened with their life or their limbs if they do. The coercion to remain enslaved and to continually be abused. But by whom? Who are the powerful? And that is the question in this case study we seek to answer. I've been inspired by an article by Caruana et al. In 2020, who says, we've got a big problem in this field. It's sad and sorry state that it's a non-field in business and society. At best, history, political science, and the law have tried to address modern indentured servitude, and with a teensy-wincy element of business and management. And if you inspect this diagram very clearly, looking at past literature and silos, technology per se is missing. Well, technology and society. We could say It is based on supply chain management or human resource management, as in e-business contexts. But more cleanly and clearly, we clarify that the reason that there aren't that many case studies or previous literature in the technology and society field is because it doesn't suit the big tech corporations. It doesn't suit us to point the finger at tech and say that tech may be contributing to this modern indentured servitude. So let's now begin our investigation of the taxi cab issues in New York City. Let's begin with the first clip.
What if your car could make you money? Extra cash, whenever you feel like driving. With Uber, you can earn when you want and chill when you want. Okay, back at it. Sure, you might already have a great job, but this is a new way to earn. Because your car isn't just a car. It's a four-wheeled money-making machine. So get your side hustle on. Sign up at uber.com/drive now.
So get your side hustle on was what attracted drivers. And here was the response by one yellow taxi cab medallion driver.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Nikolai Hens. I am a yellow cab driver since 1988. I'm an owner since 1990. Why I am here? I'm supposed to be in the streets. I am here because of you. You took my money for exclusive rights to hail in New York City, and now you give it to others for free. Either all the taxis should be with $1 million or all of them free. It's your power to rule and to make the law. Make them all free or all of them with $1 million. You cannot have taxi with $1 million and taxi free, because my investment is, I never can compete with people which got the free license. Competition is good for consumers, but it has to be fair and square. After 30 years, please let me speak, because they'll cut me off. After 30 years, I am sick and tired to have millions rules on my back and others have no rules. Why is that? I am shaking because I am so mad. I cannot cry. I never cry in my life. Not even when I was 6 years of age and my father lost everything he had in Romania to the communism. We create new communism here, protecting the Silicon Valley, protecting the Google, Facebook, and others which put money to steal what other people pay, for the city. I was forced for 5 cars to dump it after 5 years, not even 200,000 miles, because of your rules of 5 years. Now you give me one more extension a year. For what? Give me my exclusive rights back. Yes. Don't force me to stay 14, 16 hours a day to recover what other people get it for free. I'm sorry to do other things what I have. Mayor Bloomberg said we have to save the environment. How? With SUV, which makes 7 miles a gallon? And they take, please let me speak. And others, they have 8, 9, 10 people. Do they pay insurance for 10 people? No. You're supposed to verify that. You forced me to carry the insurance with the policy in the car, and others,
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. We'll cut you off.
Thank you, Chairman.
Just a warning before I play this video. 8 persons died by suicide in the first half of 2018, just in New York City alone. They were all taxi drivers who couldn't cope with driving more than 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is the brother of one of the victims of suicide.
What do we want? Accessibility. What do we want? Accessibility. What do we want? Accessibility. Cab. Now. Cab. Now. Cab. Now. Who are we?
We are the drivers.
Who are we?
We are drivers.
I lost my brother because of his inability to to adjust to somebody else's decisions and be able to earn a living. And I'm here today in front of this camera, in front of you, saying there's still other people out there that are going through the same thing.
It's been one hell of a ride. I just needed to piece it all together. There's over 100,000 of us suffering daily now. It's against all of our standards as Americans. I'm not a slave.
I'm not a slave.
I'm not a slave. I am not a slave. I am not a slave, and I refuse to be one.
I refuse to be one.
And I refuse to be one.
I'm not a slave, and I refuse to be one.
I'm not a slave. And I refuse to be one.
That documentary titled Field of Vision, I'm not a slave and I refuse to be one. Brian Rosenthal wrote an investigative piece for the New York Times titled They Were Conned, How Reckless Loans Devastated a Generation of Taxi Drivers. The medallion, which is required to drive a yellow taxicab in New York City, had its price rise from about $50,000 in the 60s to maybe $100,000 in the 80s to almost 1 million about 3 or 4 years ago. The unlucky migrants from Burma, the Middle East, China, and India were targeted by loan sharks, giving over almost everything they had in order to buy a license, believing that the medallion would keep rising in price and they were investing in their children's future, in the American dream. Here is Brian on Democracy Now!
Here on Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, a new investigation by the New York Times exposes the financial schemes at the root of the New York City taxi driver crisis. The report reveals that a group of industry leaders artificially inflated the cost of taxi medallions and orchestrated a predatory lending scheme, collecting millions of dollars in the process and putting many drivers into debilitating debt. City agencies did little to curb the system, which a Harvard professor was quoted in the report called modern-day indentured servitude. In response to the Times report, Mayor Bill de Blasio said Monday the city would launch an investigation into the predatory practices of taxi medallion brokers.
I want to turn to a clip from the Weekly. This is one of the taxi drivers that you profiled in your New York Times piece. This is Mohammed Hussein.
I bought medallion from the city. I think city will help me, you know. I see on that. I know so many drivers, they kill themselves, but I have a family, I love my family. So I don't want to kill myself. My life is more important for my family. I love my family than medallion.
That's Mohammed Hussein. Tell us more about him and tell us about the root of this problem.
He is one of those people that bought a medallion at an auction. He was unlucky enough to buy at the final auction, and he thought that he was making a decision that was going to not just improve his life, but improve his family's life for generations to come. He paid $890,000. He got a loan for the vast majority of that, but he did pour his life savings into the purchase, and now he is underwater and can't pay that back.
Could you talk about the racial aspect of this, the changing demographics of the taxi industry, just as increasing people from Asia and a lot of Indians and Pakistanis became taxi drivers and medallion owners was when the predatory practices sort of skyrocketed?
Taxi drivers who were educated in their home country as engineers or doctors, but had to drive taxis in order to make a living in America.
Here on
Sometimes hailing a taxi is easy, and sometimes it's not. That's why millions of New Yorkers rely on apps like Uber for the ability to get a ride 24/7 in all 5 boroughs, the affordability, and the option to share your ride so you can pay even less. But if the New York City Council gets its way, all of this could disappear. We need to tell the City Council, don't strand New Yorkers.
Yes, don't strand New Yorkers and keep enslaving the yellow taxi cab drivers. The amount of money that Uber and Lyft paid on lobbying and these kinds of commercials was prohibitive. We'll hear from Desai, representing taxi drivers, in a moment.
Before he had shot himself, he wrote a post on Facebook where, he really just outlined, I think, the reality that over 100,000 drivers, professional drivers in New York City are facing.
What is that reality?
It's a race to the bottom. Every day, people are going deeper and deeper into poverty. And this is the reality of the so-called gig economy. It's about destroying what has been a full-time profession, turning it into part-time poverty pay work. Uber and company, Uber and Lyft, and by the way, they're absolutely the same. It's all one same business model. They used their political might. In 2016, Uber and Lyft combined spent more on lobbying than Amazon and Walmart combined, and Microsoft as well. And so they used their political might to win deregulation bills.
They used more money on lobbying than Walmart, Microsoft,
and Amazon.
And Amazon combined.
Yes. A few years ago, Uber had 33% more lobbyists than just Walmart itself. And, Amy, the most amazing thing here is that what they're lobbying for is first exemption from existing taxi local rules and regulations. They go straight to the state level, so they are exempt from city level regulations. Once they win that deregulation, they're able to flood the streets with vehicles in order to outcompete the existing taxi industry.
And Explain wanted to go back to another excerpt of what Douglas Shifter posted on Facebook before he killed himself in front of New York City Hall on Monday. He said car companies had slashed their rates since the introduction of Uber and Lyft in the city. He wrote, quote, due to the huge numbers of cars available with desperate drivers trying to feed their families, they squeeze rates to below operating costs and force professionals like me out of business. They count their money, and we are driven down into the streets we drive, becoming homeless and hungry. I will not be a slave working for chump change. I would rather be dead.
The number of vehicles in New York City grew from 50,000 in 2012 to over 135,000 in 2018. It's not uncommon in America for taxi drivers to be driving 12-hour days, and once they've given back money for their lease vehicle, to be earning somewhere between $30 and $40 a day. That's correct, $30 and $40 a day. I met these people who would wait for me to take my kids back from football for about 2 hours to say that $20 fare, cash in hand, was half their day's salary in about 3 hours. It was a major win for them. And I'd say, what would you do with the money? Oh, I haven't fed my cat in a few days. Oh, I can't afford to go to the dentist, so I need to buy some putty to put on that cavity. And I've been reeling in pain. But these are the kinds of stories you hear. But the question is whether it is just these taxi drivers that are at the mercy of these systems. Now, let's hear what's happening to wheelchair accessibility rights as a result of Uber and Lyft.
The city has now 1,000 more medallions to auction off in terms of wheelchair accessibility. The city is not meeting the needs of wheelchair accessible passengers in the city. What's going to happen to the handicapped New Yorkers? You know, what I see is what's going to happen to them is what's happening to them now. They're also being quietly phased out of the picture. Their needs, just like our needs, are not being addressed. Whether it's the yellow taxis or whether it's Uber.
There are a lot of wheelchair there. And they need help. Those people, like I said, most of them, they go to the doctors, to the hospitals. They don't want to be late. They don't want to miss their appointment. Sometimes you are in the traffic with passenger and still on the system, the dispatcher said, please help this guy. He needs to go to the doctor. He needs, and you have passenger going very far. You cannot help. When you have the job on the screen, you must respond within 2 minutes. If not, you get fined $4,000. If something happened to the run, you must fix it within 48 hours. And when you drive in wheelchair, it's very hard, very hard. You are, those dispatchers first, they are up in Canary Cats. When your light is on, meaning you are available. They don't care where you are. It's the system actually. So when you get the job on the screen, you must respond. It doesn't matter how is the traffic, how the city is busy, you should go.
And of course, Uber and Lyft are not under those same conditions. As I was conversing with someone on this panel about this case study, bottom right came up as a notification. We can control our own destiny, said the CEO, John Zimmer. He was lobbying for abortion rights. I have nothing against lobbying for abortion rights, but maybe he should be lobbying for the yellow black taxi drivers.
Last week, the City Council passed a temporary cap for 1 year while the Taxi and Limousine Commission studies the cars on the road. That means New York will not issue any new licenses for app vehicles with the exception of those for wheelchair accessible vehicles. Corey Johnson is the City Council Speaker.
We are trying to come up with a data-driven, sound public policy package that still allows consumers and customers to get what they need.
So we come up with a data-driven package in order to figure out how the data-driven algorithms have affected the afflicted drivers. So it's data-driven. This is a councillor talking now.
While at the same time balancing the other issues that are being affected because of the explosive growth. Government deserves some blame on this because we created the medallion system, which had its own problems with not meeting the needs of many customers around the city, where you have this disruptive technology which met that need, devalued the government setup system, and over the last many years, we didn't create a regulatory framework to figure out parity or fairness in the industry, which has caused this dramatic upheaval.
Last week,
so some confessions there from government, taking some blame for what's going on.
If you're looking for a taxi ride in New York City, this may not be the place. There are a whole lot of taxis, but none of the taxis parked here at this block-long abandoned gas station in Jackson Heights, Queens, have license plates or medallions. It's become a taxi graveyard. Frustrated people who live and work in the area have been unable to get the city to do something.
It's terrible. It takes up, you know, it's an eyesore.
What do you want the city to do? I mean, really,
they got to clean it up. It's ridiculous.
So friends, is it just the yellow taxi cab drivers that are the afflicted, are the enslaved? What's happened to the Uber and Lyft drivers as Uber has slashed not once, but twice their levies to drivers?
With the touch of a button, ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft connect drivers with those looking for a ride.
I've arrived.
Andy Gonzalez, who drives for both, began with Uber shortly after the company first came to New York 7 years ago. He drove me and my producer, Laura, who's filming in the back seat.
Well, in the beginning, they pay substantially much better. Not only that, but the technology that they offered was groundbreaking.
But Gonzalez said Uber has changed how it pays drivers over the years.
They slashed the rates, not only one time, but 2 times. So just to give you a comparison, the rates that we have now are less than half of what we used to have, actually less than a third.
Despite the amount of money drivers make going down, the number of drivers themselves has gone up. Since 2011, the number of for-hire vehicles licensed in New York City has more than doubled, from 50,000 to about 130,000 cars, all required to be licensed by the city's Taxi and Limousine Commission. The majority of the new cars are used for app services like Uber and Lyft. With that surge has come more congestion, making it harder to move through the city. But are there enough riders for all those additional cars? An independent transportation study in 2017 found that more than a third of taxi and app vehicles in Manhattan's Central Business District were unoccupied during daytime hours.
When you were working on Uber or Lyft, do you find that you're busy all the time, or?
Not anymore. In the beginning, yes, it was busy because there was less cars. But now, if I were to do solely, let's say, Uber or Lyft, I can go 30 minutes, 40 minutes without a passenger. And when you do get somebody, you're driving, you say, 7 minutes to get them, and the ride will only be like $6. So you just spend like an hour and 20 minutes, and you make $6 minus your gas, minus anything. So you're really like operating at a loss.
So $6, friends, $6 an hour for a minimum wage across America, which barely is about 12.
If you're looking for the devil, don't look too far.
It's kind of ironic. You have a beautiful car here. You're wearing a nice outfit.
Thank you, sir.
But you're not earning a wage that matches this.
No.
Just a few years.
New York.
Last week, there was an article published talking about how the Uber and Lyft bubble has burst. Basically, there are so many cars on the road now and so many drivers that we are causing perhaps more externalities, negative externalities than we had proposed through the efficiency gains. That story ran again in the New York Times. And in 2016, I proposed the question of why Uber and Lyft were continually slashing prices that they were giving drivers. And the ultimate hope, of course, was that Uber and Lyft would not require drivers in the future. So it's not just the yellow taxi cab drivers who have been negatively impacted, almost driving around 12 to 14 hours a day with no recompense, but the Uber and Lyft drivers themselves who leased vehicles over a certain period of time for $500 a week are nowhere near making ends meet today. And Uber and Lyft were hoping that we would have autonomous vehicles out there already. So the question is, what is really going on here? Were humans being used as pawns in this deregulation approach to taxi and transportation? So I'll leave you with those thoughts. And before I do, looking at a new way of doing design thinking for public policy. I will go 2 minutes over, and forgive me for that, but I just want to show you what some young people believe the answer is to this unbelievable state that we find ourselves in across markets across the world. This is the final video clip.
Cities around the world face a lot of social conflict between Uber drivers and taxi drivers. Through the Bosch Alumni Network, we brought together a group of very diverse experts that can bring new perspectives together to work on a challenge that we all face and we can all connect to.
This is the cell phone from a 60-year-old lady, but old school. And then we prototyped what we think the changes should be. And the idea would be to not see that only as a service, but also to engage with the person that you are having the ride with.
Seeing the challenges that we see in the world,
We have come to a point where we actually need to reverse the traditional approach to public policy that is drawn out in ministries or in local authorities without taking the human-centered approach into account.
We are treating a topic that's highly relevant and also has a connection to my everyday work. This is why I'm here, and I'm also here because I really like opportunities where I can engage with exciting personalities from different walks of life and talk together with them about policy questions.
So this project actually came into being because Kira approached us with this idea to say, why don't we bring the design thinking methodology together with a public policy case?
This is a program that's brought together by the Global Diplomacy Lab and the Bosch Alumni Network. We've been really focusing on how can we teach public sector workers about design thinking in a way that's more than theoretical. They actually got to apply the methodology to a real world problem and get results in real time.
How can we design a system that provides safe spaces for riders with special needs who maybe weren't being served by Uber and Lyft because there isn't any policy requirement for them to serve those riders?
Most of the things that happen in the Bosch Alumni Network are initiated by the network members. We really want to encourage network members, if they have something at the back of their head that they've always wanted to do, they can approach us and we will try to make it happen.
So just to leave there on a positive point on the potential for design thinking and public policy, looking at the social implications, the technology impacts, and finally, what has to change in the environment to get something more positive and to help people come out of that enslavement and modern indentured servitude they're living in. Thank you so much.